All right, so I am going to demonstrate the 3 most common ways to cut an onion. And the last way to cut this onion is a way that I came up with, and it's a way that you've probably never seen. I believe the way that I will show you at the end of this video to cut an onion is not only extremely efficient, but it allows you to cut the onion safer, with more control, and it allows you to gain the size of onion that you're looking for. Every method of cutting an onion is different, and ultimately there is a lot of preference when it comes to cutting an onion. But I will show you just what I think might be helpful for you next time you go to cut an onion. So first things first is I'm gonna go ahead and take the skin off of these onions. And to do that, the most simple way is to just go ahead and cut it from root to root, leaving the root intact, and just peel off the first layer. And this is sometimes these smaller onions, kind of a trickier thing. There we go. And the first layer, I usually peel the first layer off of an onion. It's just, depending on what's on the outside, oxidation and things like that, you don't want to have that on your onion. And the first method I'm going to show you is the vertical lines. It's called the lazy chop. The lazy chop is you slice an onion from pole to pole, and you go ahead and you make little slices, vertical slices down the onion all the way to the base. So if you did it right, you should have pretty equal vertical lines going across the onion. And the next step is you simply just chop. And if you want, you can save the root. I don't really save the root. You can chop it up and throw it away. It's up to you. So as you can see here, this dice is pretty nice. It's pretty fine. But the only issue with this dice, and this is why it's called the lazy chop, is because you're cutting vertically and an onion has layers that are circular, the vertical lines that you're cutting are going to create different size layers of onions. So you're not going to have the same size throughout. You'll have roughly a close size to what you're looking for. And if you're a home cook like me and not like a professional chef, you don't really need to worry about trying to make your onions perfect, right? But if you're working in a fancy Michelin star restaurant, or even just a nice restaurant, you would pride yourself on your cutting abilities. And depending on what you're cooking, the size of an onion really does matter, because in some instances, larger chunks of onions, they sweat out, they release their flavors, but they don't dissolve all the way into a meal. And that can drastically affect the flavor, plus the texture of it. So it's very important to be able to control your onion size. So that's called the lazy chop. And the lazy chop is good for me. I like the lazy chop. I don't really need to do the horizontal lines per se, because I'm not needing to try to control the size of the onion, but it's a good one. So that's the first method. We're gonna go ahead and swipe this off into the trash can. The second method is the vertical chop with the horizontal lines. Now, this is probably one of the most famous methods for cutting an onion. And ultimately, I believe that this is taught in culinary schools. I've never been to culinary school, but I've heard that this is actually how they teach you to cut an onion. And this is good. So we're gonna go ahead and keep this tiny little onion intact. Find the root end, which is on this side. We're going to cut down vertically like we did before. And this is a really small onion, but I'm gonna try my best. You're gonna go ahead and make one horizontal cut, not too far. You don't wanna cut all the way to the root, and then one right above it. Put your fingers, kind of hold it together. All right, and now hold it together and just chop. There you go. And that is called the vertical horizontal chop. And in this instance, the onion is much more consistent in its size in the dice. Not like the lazy chop where you're not getting equal size of the onion. You're gonna have more control of sizing when you do it this way. And this is the way that they teach in culinary school. As you can see, put some on this board. If you were to look at this up close, it's more of a consistent size versus that lazy chop, which is why people like it. It's good for like pico de gallos and things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and swipe that off. So it takes, as you can see, it's not as lazy because it takes a little more effort and a little more dangerous, because most people that don't have good knife skills, I mean, I'm still learning how to use a knife myself. The vertical lines aren't the issue, it's the horizontal, because when you're cutting horizontally, it's almost like a mandolin. The blade is going into the onion and your fingers are right here, and if you angle it up, not a good day. You're gonna slice the end of your finger off. So that's why it takes a little bit more effort. The next method is the diagonal cut. The diagonal cut is a little more difficult than the vertical cut, and I would say even a little bit more difficult than the horizontal vertical cut method of slicing an onion, because the ultimate goal of the diagonal cut is you're trying to follow the grooves of an onion to maintain accuracy on the size. So if you see how there's layers in this onion, if I go vertically, I'm gonna get different sized pieces because it's a sphere or a spheroid. But if I go diagonally, kind of focusing on getting to the root at angles, it should follow the natural shape of an onion and should allow you to control the size better. So with that being said, I'm gonna cut off one end of the onion, and we're gonna do this the best we can. We're going to slice into the center, and we're going to follow these natural lines. All right, with that being said, we got the kind of following the angle, and that's good. And then now all we do is slice. Okay. With that, you can see it's roughly similar to the vertical horizontal cut, because you're controlling how big these pieces are based off of following the curvature of the onion. So most of the layers are going to produce similar sized pieces. It's not going to be perfect because the closer you get to the center of the onion, you're going to kind of narrow the size of those layers. So the deeper in the onion you go, the smaller the pieces it's going to be. Can't really get around that. That's just how it is. And with that being said, some people like that method. As you can see, it's very similar to the vertical and horizontal method of cutting, not like the lazy chop, which gives you kind of inconsistent sized pieces. But ultimately, that method still is dangerous because when you're working with a knife, you're kind of cutting at an angle, and it's just not a comfortable way to cut an onion. It's not comfortable in the sense that it doesn't feel natural, and you're kind of like, it just doesn't feel that good. So until you actually try it, you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're gonna go ahead and scrape that off. And now I'm going to show you my way to slice an onion, which actually will give you a very accurate cut, while at the same time make it safer for you to cut the onion. At the same time, it will prep the onion quicker, while at the same time, it's gonna give you the same size pieces, if I didn't already say that. So we're gonna go ahead and take this onion right here. We're going to cut the end off, and then we're gonna make a little slice right here, just so I can grab my finger under this layer and pull the first layer off, all the way around this onion. Like I said, I like the first layer going. That's just my preference. Some people aren't that way. First layer for me. And that gives you kind of a bulbish stem to work with. Now this is the secret. if you can recall how I told you that we follow the diagonal lines and the diagonal cut, we're going to do the same thing in this instance. But in this instance, we're going to roll the onion. So on one side, pick a side, you're going to go ahead and slice halfway through and flip. And you're going to find that line and slice halfway through to the root. And the root should stop you. It's a little harder, so that's a nice little guide. And flip. And slice halfway through. Flip. And you're going to slice halfway through again. And then now, instead of flipping, you're just going to roll to the halfway point between the first two cuts. And then you're going to roll halfway point between the next two cuts. And this is really safe because you're actually just able to roll this onion the direction you want it to go. Halfway point, two cuts. And then now we're going to make these cuts in between these cuts. And these cuts between these cuts. And then these cuts between these cuts. And then we're going to get this cut between this cut. We're going to get this cut between this cut. And we're going to get this cut between this cut. And we're going to get this cut between this cut. And then with that being said, you have a perfectly orbital cut onion. And now what we're going to do is just slice it in half. Like so. And now you can just chop one side. And look, you have another one already ready to go. There you go. And now you have a dice similar to that of the diagonal dice. And with that being said, it gives you a consistent size of onions while at the same time prepping it for you quicker. It's easier, it's safer, and you can prepare the whole onion versus just a single half. Now, this wouldn't necessarily be good if you're trying to use less onion, like just maybe half of an onion. You know, you may want to choose a different method. But if you know you're going to use a full onion, that would be my go-to method. And I hope that you found this video helpful. And if you would, like and subscribe for more content.